Detroit Lions have 5 new coaches on their coaching staff, and everybody's kind of wondering what free agents that those guys can help bring over to Detroit with them. Let's talk about it. Hi, Mike Payton from A to Z Sports Detroit. Today we're going to talk about the 5 new Lions coaches and what those guys can help bring over in terms of free agents. First off, let's talk about the coaches. There's new offensive coordinator John Morton. There's new passing game coordinator David Shaw. There's new defensive line coach Casey Rogers. And then there's 2 new offensive assistants, Tyler Roll and Bruce Gradkowski. Let's jump into what those guys can bring in. We'll start with new offensive coordinator John Morton. First, Lil Jordan Humphrey is somebody that I think the Lions could really get a lot out of. This team needs another wide receiver 3. I know that Tim Patrick is here, and Patrick has some history with Morton, and the Lions, would be smart to probably bring him back at some capacity, but he is 32 years old. Lil Jordan Humphrey is a big 6'4" receiver, 225 pounds, can stretch the field a little bit, can get up in the end zone, can get that contested catch. He's just been in a position where he's constantly been buried on the depth chart in Denver, and I think in Detroit he has a much better chance to not be buried, obviously. I think he could be the wide receiver 3 here. I think he could absolutely bring a lot of what Tim Patrick brought last year, plus a little bit more, since he still, kind of has his legs underneath him. I mean, I love Tim Patrick. I do, but there were a lot of times where he would make big catches and you would see that he just didn't have that speed that he once had. And, I think if you can have them both, that would be perfect. But I think Lil Jordan Humphrey is somebody that could really kind of open things up for the Lions offense. The other guy that Morton could help bring in is Zach Wilson. I know, obviously, Lions fans love Hendon Hooker, but at this point, it just kind of feels like it's just not going to happen for him. He's already 27 years old. It's, they're already kind of signing quarterbacks to play over him. It's not a good situation. It doesn't seem like it's going to work out. Zach Wilson, while he has not been someone who has lived up to being the 2nd overall pick in the draft, he is somebody that, maybe you bring him in, you sit him with Mark Brunell, and Jared Goff and John Morton and Dan Campbell, and maybe you can fashion a quarterback 2 out of him. And at worst, he was just a guy you had in at training camp once, and maybe it didn't work out. You cut him. Next, we'll move on to defensive line coach Casey Rogers. Now, you'd love to say that the Lions could bring in Vita Vea or Kalijah Kancey or Yaya Diaby, but that's just not going to happen because none of those guys are free agents. The only guy that really would make a big difference here is Anthony Nelson, and by big difference, I mean he would be a really solid depth piece for the Lions. Like, this team really needs depth along their defensive line. We really saw that this year with the Lions not only losing their starters, but the guys right after them as well. I mean, nobody expected Al-Quadin Muhammad to play for this team this year. And while he did play good, it wasn't what anyone expected. You get what I'm saying? I think that Anthony Nelson could be a really solid depth piece. And I also believe that, Patrick O'Connor probably saves himself a spot on this team with Rodgers coming here too, since they have a lot of history together, Rodgers and O'Connor. So next up is offensive assistant Bruce Gradkowski. Now, Gradkowski is an interesting one because this is his first NFL job. He's never worked in the NFL as a coach before. But one guy he could bring is wide receiver Hakeem Butler, who he was the offensive coordinator for in the UFL for the St. Louis Battlehawks. Butler is somebody who was the UFL Offensive Player of the Year last year, but makes horrible decisions when it comes to signing with NFL teams because he always goes somewhere where he's never going to get a chance to play. Like, he signed with Cincinnati last summer. What were the chances he would play over T. Higgins and Jamar Chase? I think Butler has a chance to be a wide receiver 3 at best, and he just needs to go to a team that's actually going to give him a shot to play, and I think the Lions can be that team. Next, we're looking at passing coordinator David Shaw. Now, a big one here. Lions fans have been asking me about this guy all off season, which has been 2-3 weeks at this point. But Paulson Adebo, cornerback Paulson Adebo, played for Shaw at Stanford. Is somebody, Shaw helped Adebo get drafted in the 3rd round by the Saints. We've seen Adebo get better and better as the years have gone by. He could be somewhat of a ball hawk. If Carlton Davis doesn't come back to this team, they're going to need a cornerback to help there. I think a Debo would be a great fit for the Lions. The next one is another quarterback. It's Davis Mills. Mills played at Stanford for Shaw. Another, example. This guy actually, I think, would be better than Zach Wilson in a sense that he's probably ready to be a quarterback too already. We've seen him start some games in the NFL, and while he's not anything that you would be super excited about, he can go out and control a game. He could be a quarterback. Whatever you call it, he could babysit the game, and he'll make it happen for the Lions. I think it's not a bad move. The last guy is new offensive assistant Tyler Roll. Now, here's an interesting one: Trey Lance. Now, I know Lions fans might not be super excited about Trey Lance because it has not worked out for him in the NFL. But Roll is Lance's offensive coordinator. He helped Lance get drafted 3rd overall by the 49ers, and I just think that you put him back with Roll, you put him with Brunell and Campbell and Morton and Jared Goff as a mentor, and I think maybe you can get something out of him. It's crazy to me that Lance is still just 24 years old. I know the NFL likes to throw quarterbacks away, but I still think this guy's a little too young to just throw away. I think there's something there. Maybe you could at least get a backup quarterback out of him. Maybe you could get more. Who knows? We've already seen the Lions completely rebuild Jared Goff. Who's to say they can't do it with another quarterback? So those are the 8 ideas that we have. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time.